So James Q Quick on both of those if you want to watch. I don't know if you use StreamYard yourself. If not, you can see in the comment section, you can see all the comments. You just won't be able to respond. So if you wanted to respond, which you don't have to, you could go to one of those and be in the chat there.
Okay. Sounds good.
I actually streamed earlier today. I streamed yesterday and earlier today, which I haven't streamed outside of our podcast episode in a while. So it's kind of cool to be back on stream. And Jay, who's in the chat from Twitch, Jay was, yes, your first comment, and Jay was in the stream. It was only like 2 hours ago. So welcome back to the channel.
2 in 1 day is definitely a way to get back into streaming again.
Yeah. So I migrated my personal site like a couple of months ago. And when I did it, I wanted to do like MVP first.
Mm-hmm.
And did you see the comment? Jay left the window open, and so he got startled when we came back, which is great. That's fantastic. But I migrated my personal site to Astro, which is something I just kind of wanted to try out. And I wanted to ship it before finishing everything. So I shipped it and then didn't migrate my courses landing page and didn't migrate my uses page and other stuff. And so I've gotten some messages from people like, hey, these links don't work. So I figured I needed to go through and do that. So yesterday I did my courses pages, and then today I did the uses page. So I got some good work done on that.
I always get nervous about like posting links to my work because like as soon as you post it, you know someone is going to find something that's broken.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like you know that something's going to be broken, and then you're going to have to go back and scramble to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. It's all. I mean, I don't know. None of us are perfect. None of us have perfect sites, so I guess I'm just comfortable knowing that. But it also did give me a little bit of urgency after I got like 3 or 4 messages of like, okay, this is something that I actually need to go and do.
Like it's helpful. It's just stressful at first when people are like, hey, this is broken. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
Yep. Yeah. And the amount of features and updates and things I want to add, I feel like just never ends, which is partially fun, partially like exhausting, but cool. I think we can go ahead and kick off. We'll have people join us. Hopefully we'll get some questions and stuff, but this is maybe a series I'll do of career chats with people. A lot of people go through different programs. 100 Devs is one of them, and they end up reaching out for career chats. And I've done a lot of those privately and figured they would be beneficial for other people as well. And that's why I asked if you would be comfortable coming on and doing that. So I'm excited to meet you for like outside of just messages on Twitter for the first time. And anyway, welcome to the channel. Do you want to introduce yourself, give people a little bit of background and exciting news that you have already shared, but like coming to start this Monday?
Sure. So my name's Leah. On Twitter and on Twitch, I'm Leah T Codes. I started 100 Devs in January. So I guess my background is that I have my bachelor's of science in mathematics. I graduated during COVID. And since COVID and everything, a lot of places stopped hiring. So I ended up going into teaching because it was easier to get into. So I taught high school algebra and geometry for 1.5 years before I quit in December to focus on transitioning into tech full time. Because I took some programming courses in college and I always wanted to do applied math, which programming fits into that. So in January, I started with 100 Devs, which is a free online program for learning full stack web development. It focuses on the MERN stack, so MongoDB, Express, React, Node, so like a whole JavaScript stack. And since January, I did that full time. I participated in 2 hackathons. I volunteered and made a website for a nonprofit. I got a freelancing client. I contributed to Free Code Camp, like just everything I could to make myself like hireable. And I got a job. So I recently just accepted an offer and I start my job on Monday as an email developer starting out.
That's amazing. I feel like all the advice that I would usually give people for like extra things to do is like, you're like, yeah, I did all those. But it's also cool to see that be like proof of like these things actually go a long way. So several of different things you said. I'm wondering, like on the social side, so you have a pretty good following on Twitter. Was that something that you did intentionally? Did you want to build up an audience on Twitter? Was that just like your place to share and kind of hold yourself accountable for the things that you were doing?
Yeah, so it was more so when it started, I noticed, so like the day 100 Doves started, there was like 8,000 people on Twitch. And Leon mentioned like that it was on Twitter because he did the tweets, like the tweets would be how we like checked into classes. So we had to like retweet that. So that's why I got on Twitter. And I noticed like a lot of people were tweeting. So I started tweeting more to kind of join that community, you know? So it's like, oh, these other people are tweeting about 100 Doves. I'll tweet about it and we can like hype each other up and support each other. And then I just kept like doing it to hold myself accountable and show my work and everything. And then it just, I never expected it to get to where it is because like in January I think I had like 20 followers and I have like 9,000 now, just from like sharing my projects and interacting with people and stuff. So I never really went into it thinking like, oh, I'm gonna be like a content creator or something. I was just on social media.
Yeah, but it's such a useful thing for several different reasons. Like even if you just use it for the accountability piece, like if you tell yourself like I'm going to do 100 days of code as an example, like that's such a good way to help yourself give yourself a clear goal of consistency. Like every day I'm going to have something related to programming and I'm going to share that thing. But then the side effect of that is like the more people hear and see you talk about a thing, they know you for that thing. So talking about learning journey and projects that you build and all those things is to me like only beneficial because like I don't know if like the social part or streaming factored into getting the job, but the reality is like people find people through Twitter. They find people on Twitch and then they have a better understanding for them as a person, as a developer, et cetera, than just someone who applies blindly with a resume. Because I've always said like resumes they're literally just words on a page. You can put whatever you want on there. But like the tangible things that you've done and shared and built and stuff, that's the stuff that has like super, super good value.
I agree. And it's actually kind of funny because since I was so, I guess, like prominent on Twitter and stuff, the person who referred me for the company I ended up getting hired at was another person in 100 Devs, but he referred me because he kept seeing my stuff on Twitter and we had interacted. And he was like, I know she can do this. So I'm going to refer her because she deserves a job. And I ended up getting like at first the company, it was for a different position and they were like, oh, you don't have enough experience. But then the recruiter remembered me and liked me. So when another position opened, she instantly tried to get me into it. And then I ended up getting hired there. So I had a lot of opportunities come to me from Twitter. And then like on Twitch, I connected with people who like, you know, are all in tech. So like work at like Discord and Netflix and Google, like just building a network and just people like you're friends with, like becoming friends with other people in tech who can help you and like understand.
Yeah. I think like the idea of networking has a bad connotation. Like you think of like the shitty version of networking and you walk into a group and you're like, I'm James, I do this. What can you do for me type thing. But like networking is it's just showing up, and showing up can be like posting a tweet. It's supporting people when they tweet something. It's showing up in their live stream and leaving a comment. People comment if you're here hanging out with us now. But like all that stuff, like that's networking. It's just, so I've actually changed in my head. I say this, like instead of saying networking, I prefer to say just investing in the community, like just being a part of the community. That takes the pressure off. Like just be there, just show up and be a part of the conversation that, that people are having in the industry, in the space that you want to be in or are already in.
I agree with that. I think at first when I was going into it, I was really nervous because I was like, I don't want to like do this whole going into it and be like, oh, I'm trying to be friends with you, but just so you can help me. Because it's like, I don't want to do that. That feels like really shady. But then I just kind of like, no, I'm literally going into it just to be friends with someone. Like, I'm just going to act like we're friends, talk like a normal conversation and not expect anything. Because I never ask people for referrals or anything. Because I don't, some people do that and that's fine. I didn't feel comfortable doing that. But even in my interviews, I noticed like I was just comfortable and I just talked to them like we were friends. And I think that really helped them see like I'd be a good fit for the team too, because I wasn't just talking about tech stuff. I was able to like relate to them.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the things that good interviewers do, and there's a lot of not good interviewers, is they help you reach that point of being comfortable. Because the reality, like they want to know what you're capable of at your best. Like nobody really wants somebody to show up and be terrified because you're not going to get a feel for who they are and what they're capable of and what they know because they're going to be nervous, etc. So
Yeah.
good interviewers will actually help you get to that level of comfort to be yourself. There's a comment from Coder Grammar that says networking is no fun for introverts. In person networking, I mean, which is like very interesting because a lot of people that do content and develop relations and that sort of stuff actually identify as being introverts. I'm much more extroverted, I think, than a lot of my friends that I've talked to about this. How do you kind of see yourself in introvert versus extrovert, and does that factor into like the content creation from just being active on Twitter? Is that something that is kind of hard for you? Does that come kind of natural? What is that like for you?
So I would say I'm an introvert. It used to be way worse because I used to have like really bad social anxiety too. Like after high school and stuff, it was like really bad. Like I'd start like shaking and almost hyperventilating if I
Yeah.
talked up in my college classes.
Yep.
So I've come a long ways. But I feel like I'm an introvert. Like sometimes if I hit networking too hard, like I did in March, I had like 4 coffee chats a week and I kept hitting them really hard. I like shut down for like a month. I was like, I can't talk to anyone. I just have to like, I felt burnout.
Yep.
I in-person ones are like really awkward for me too. I feel like I just had to keep pushing myself to keep doing it. It's easier for me to do like online virtual though. I feel like, and I just got to some point, I just started feeling comfortable with it, I guess, because I did it so much. And I just realized like, hey, you're just becoming friends with these people, you know, like just seeing it in that kind of view. I was going to say something else. I just forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah, I can jump in. So it's interesting for me. For the most part, I would consider myself super extroverted. And people, the definition of this the more modern definition of this is based on where you get energy from, where you recharge. So do you get energy / recharge from being around people or from being alone? And I definitely have moments I can totally be alone and be totally good, but I get most of my energy from other people. And so like, I think to taking the pressure off type of thing. And again, it's not something I struggle with. So like take my insights with a grain of salt, or it's not something I struggle with a ton. But like once you find that first conversation and like you realize it doesn't have to be as uncomfortable as you think it is in your head. And once you find that one person that you can talk to and you're comfortable with, and I talked about this with a bunch of people at All Things Open last week, a conference I was at, we were like, hey, we should, like all of us, we just need that one person that we're comfortable with. And then we just follow each other around because we just need that one person. So I think kind of easing yourself into that and having an early connection, an early successful conversation makes it a lot easier. And one of the things that I've practiced doing, you mentioned like asking questions and shaking. I still do that to this day, but I've been really intentional of anytime I'm in a group and I have the chance to ask a question, I do it for 2 reasons. One is just getting more comfortable being out there in front of people. And again, like this is a big part of my career now, but also from a visibility standpoint, like if you're with if it's a job thing and like you've got VPs and directors, et cetera, like they don't know who you are until they know who you are. And so just asking a random question that is the least bit intelligent is a way to like push yourself to put yourself out there and then also get some extra visibility for yourself as well.
I agree. I remember you asked about on Twitter too. And I feel like it's easier to share my content on Twitter. What gets overwhelming is sometimes like if my tweet like blows up more than I thought it would, and then you get all these comments and it's like you want to respond to everyone, but then it's like so many comments. That becomes overwhelming sometimes. And so I'll just like have to like shut my phone off and then come back to it the next day. Because especially when I was job hunting, because I'm like, okay, I have to apply to like 20 something jobs a day. Okay, I have these comments I have to respond to. Now I have to check my DMs. Now I have to check LinkedIn. And then I was like, you have so much to do that I'm just like overwhelmed by the amount of stuff to do. So that
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, it's an interesting thing having an audience. And I talked about this in my talk last week, which somebody, Nick, who's in the comments said, that you came or that we talked at ATL last week and now I was hanging out. Thank you, by the way. Interesting thing about doing content and building an audience and that sort of stuff is like your impact grows. So like for me, from a teaching perspective, now I get to impact and teach people all across the world, like through Twitter, through YouTube, through podcasts, through content in general. And that's an amazing feeling. The downside is like, you never have enough time to do the one-on-one things that you would like to. Like when you only have 5 people to work with, like you can spend a lot of one-on-one time with 5 people. When that scales up, it gets more difficult to do that. And I struggle with like I am continuously working on prioritization and being more comfortable saying no to things and also just not responding sometimes. And that's hard because I never want to be the person that doesn't respond. But like reality is it gets really overwhelming like fairly quickly once you have a lot of conversations happening at once.
I agree. That's exactly where I get, because it's like I don't want to not respond to people. Like I want to respond to all of them, but then it's like it's a lot to sit there and respond to all of them. If you're like getting so many comments, even if they continue, like maybe the first day I can respond to all of them, but then you get more and more, and then it's just like
Yep.
I can't keep responding for the same tweet. Like I want to help everyone, which is why I also like I think streaming is good because you can kind of answer a bunch of questions at once,
Yep.
so it's like an easier way than trying to like message each person separately or something.
Agreed. Yeah, and then some of that too, and this goes back to again, I can't remember if we were live when I mentioned this, but Scott Hanselman from Microsoft, big speaker and just big personality in tech, has talked about this a lot in the 2 times I've seen him speak recently. Is like you only have so many keystrokes, like you only have so many keystrokes that you can do in your entire life, and so you kind of find ways to preserve that. And so his thing was like, if you ask me a question, instead of me answering it for you, I'm going to go create a piece of content and then I'm going to point you to that. And then I can point everybody else that asked that question later on. I actually did this recently where someone asked me for tips on salary negotiation. And so I was like, I'll create a TikTok and just like give out these tips and then send the link to the TikTok. But now other people can benefit from it too.
I think that's really smart. And that's, I don't know, that makes me think of when I was teaching, if enough students would ask me how to do something, I'd eventually just post a video of me working through an example, because it's like, okay, let me just go ahead and post this for all my students so that they can watch this so that I don't have everyone like messaging me confused about this.
That's 100% the reason I started my YouTube channel. If you look, like 14 of the earliest videos I did were a series on building games. And it's because I was doing these workshops over and over again and getting the same questions. And then after recording the videos, I could just say, go watch the video. It was much easier. By the way, a couple of comments just kind of catching up on chat. Jay said he's an introvert when he's on, and hella off when not, which like totally understand. Ryan says hi to you, by the way.
Hey,
Daryl
Ryan.
says, love watching you on Twitch, which I need to do. Nick says, don't waste your keystrokes. Agreed. Coding after 30. I'm an introvert too, but practice will make it easier. Time invested in networking and community is worth stepping out of your comfort zone. Something we talked a little bit too of just like pushing yourself some. I think you also have to have a lot of respect for we all respond differently. And sometimes we find those moments where we get overwhelmed and we have to take our time to ourselves to recharge. But you continue to push yourself a little bit to get some practice doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely what I found. Because like I took a long break from networking, which I took a break from like in like coffee chats like this, but I still was like doing Twitter and interacting with people and doing LinkedIn. So I guess I was still networking. And I feel like streaming, even if you don't like, say you get more nervous with like one-on-one coffee chats like this, but you feel like you feel comfortable streaming your networking, like just on Twitch, just interacting with chat. You're networking. A ton of people who are in tech will come and help you. You learn a lot. It also helped me for interviews, I feel like, because I've already done like live coding. I mean, I did like hours and like 300 hours of live coding on Twitch. And if you can do that in front of like 80 or 100 people, you can do it in front of one interviewer. So I would just say, keep pushing yourself, like network with what works for you. If you feel like you get more nervous in this, like in this kind of environment, maybe try with just Twitter at first, just interacting with people, maybe just DMing them, or try streaming yourself. Like there's other ways you can also adjust your networking until you feel comfortable with doing like one-on-ones as well.
Absolutely. I talk about that a lot with like content creation too. Like posting a tweet is content. So like people get really intimidated of like, I don't know how to be a content creator. Well, just share, like just get in the habit of sharing the thing you're doing, whether it's on Twitch, whether it's a blog post, maybe it's a video, but just get in the habit of sharing. Coding After 30 says, I'm curious if you have tips for someone trying to get their foot in the door in order to land their first dev role. Seems that first step is the hardest, which I think unanimously people will say like the first job is the hardest, because after that, then you actually have like the role to lean back on to then apply for the next one. We talked about some of the things that you've done, but any additional like general advice you have for people that are going through what you have recently gone through?
So I would say for the longest time I felt like I wasn't ready to apply. I would say probably like if you have like your portfolio set up, if you have like your GitHub set up, and you have like a really big project that you can talk comfortably about, then I would say go ahead and apply. The biggest thing I think helped me is like for 100 devs, we had to build a project we spent 100 hours on. I spent like 200 hours
Wow.
on mine because it
Really?
continued to grow and grow.
Wow. Okay.
I spent way too long on it. But I built a multiplayer math quiz app. So it allows students to like play math quizzes against each other. They can like compete against each other. And I did that because it ties into my background as a teacher and my math background. And that was the main thing I was asked about in interviews. Like whenever they asked me like talk about a project, I talked about that one because I spent 200 hours on it. So I could talk for days on that one. Because I used React, Flask, Socket.io, and MongoDB. So I talked about like the Socket.io connection and different stuff, like the interactivity. For one of them, I had to give a presentation. So I did a presentation on my project, and I built a diagram that showed the interaction between like the front end, back end, and the database for the Socket.io connectivity, like some of it. So I think that was one of the biggest things that helped me was having that huge project and being able to like talk about it, because that helps you especially get past the first sniff test where they make sure like you do know, because some people like lie on their resume and stuff. So the main person you talk to is mainly just seeing like, does she actually know how to program so that you can get to the next round.
Yeah. I love when I get into conversations and things that I'm already super passionate about, other people start the conversation with, because like this is 100%. So my experience, I have a computer science degree. My degree is like, I didn't learn the way I should. Like I graduated and didn't know the shit that I should have learned, to be quite honest. But the one thing I did do, and this wasn't even intentional, this was just out of curiosity and wanting to learn, is I like taught myself how to build a mobile app with Android, and it was a Harry Potter trivia app at the time. And that was just something I wanted to build. I wasn't making a strategic decision to blah blah blah. And I had interviews with Microsoft, like one of the biggest tech companies in the world. And that project is what I talked about in 90% of my conversations, because I had spent so much time, because it was something outside of the classroom that I could share, that like, this is not just something I did for requirements. It's something because I was excited to learn. I had the capability to learn and actually publish something all the way through. So I've always told that story as a way to let people know like one or two of those things that you can take and confidently talk about, that's going to be a real big difference maker in conversations and interviews.
Yeah. And also because I was able to like, when they asked like, why did you make this? I was able to talk about like how I taught those subjects, and I saw that my students were more engaged if they were competing against each other with like Kahoot or
That's
something.
so good. Yeah, absolutely.
So I was like, oh, I knew that there was a need for more engaging like math apps, and also the UI on a lot of educational apps suck. So I saw that there was a need for this, and I created it. And I think the interviewers like that. Like I had like a reason for why I made it. My last interview, that the one I accepted the position for, we started talking about how the UI for educational stuff isn't the best, because like that made him to start talking about like how his kids have to do online assignments and how the UI is awful.
Yep. I feel like that's a pretty common story. Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's such a hack, especially if you can do it with something that you have an excitement enough or interest enough to drive you to help get it to completion. And one of the things, I'm actually curious, one of the things I see people struggle in that situation with over and over again is they try to build too much to start and they get overwhelmed, and they don't quite have an understanding of how to break things down into smaller components and work on them and build up to a project. Was that a struggle that you have? Did you try to take on too much at first? Did you have trouble like breaking it down? How was the evolution of like building that to completion for you?
I think I was good breaking it down. I am the type of person, I worry about stuff before I get to it. So like I was breaking. So first I started with my with Figma, I did the prototype for it.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So I realized I started with mobile first, because I know that students would mainly use cell phones. So I knew it needed to like be adaptive for mobile. So I started with a mobile first design. I got the prototype, realized what pages I would need and everything. Then I did the back end, the API. I set it up to work to like generate just the quiz questions at first.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't worry about Socket.io. I just did the quiz questions.
Yep.
Then I did the front end. I set up the front end to generate all the questions. So I got it working just for single player at first. Once I had that, I went back and started doing the Socket.io because I never used it before. And I had never used Python or Flask before. So I was just like, I'm going to learn it all. So I had to do a bunch of research and a bunch of debugging to figure out Socket.io and everything. But I just kept gradually building up.
Yep.
But before I even started the Socket.io, I was already like, I don't know what I'm doing, like freaking out about it. But I didn't really have problems like breaking it up into smaller parts.
Yeah, that's so good. That's exactly how you set yourself up for success, is being able to do like little chunks and do them in isolation, right? Like you work on a small piece of the back end, you're not worried about the front end yet until that stuff is ready to actually start being integrated. I love all of that. By the way, Nick Morrow, the name, like, I don't know if people watch Law and Order SVU. I've been watching it a lot recently, and Nick Amaro was one of the main characters for a couple of seasons, and it like throws me off. Coding After 30 said, I see lots of people have the mindset of needing to take more tutorials to feel ready. For me, tutorials turned into a form of procrastination that kept me from getting out there. This is a pretty big topic of like falling into the idea of tutorial hell. And you will learn infinitely more from building something on your own and not following tutorials. Tutorials have their place, but the actual learning for me, I think, comes from the building part. And it sounds like you've gotten to do a lot of that versus just the tutorial part. Did you struggle with like finding yourself getting caught up too much in tutorials versus actually being able to build something yourself?
I'm going to be honest. Tutorials stress me out because they will tell you to do something and they will not explain why. And I am a math major. I have to know why. Like, I have to know why. If you don't tell me, I'm confused. If they don't understand the logic, I'm just like, why am I doing this if you're not telling me the logic behind it? So I feel like I learned a lot more when I built stuff myself. I didn't really lean on tutorials just because like I said, they confused me more because they were just telling me to do things. Like they would give you all these NPM packages and you don't even need them. You can build it without them, but that's what they use, but they didn't explain why. So I mainly built my own projects. For 100 devs, Leon would give us like base code, and then he would want us to change something about it. So like from the beginning, I was used to like changing tutorials and changing things to like be customized. And I feel like you learn more that way than if you're just following the tutorial, because at some point you're just regurgitating the info, but you don't really understand why. Whereas making my project I spent so long on, I didn't use tutorials. If I did, it was only to like when I had a bug
piece.
Yeah. And I learned so much during that project because I was like knee deep in documentation and like Stack Overflow. Like I had to debug so many things myself because you do encounter more bugs when you don't use tutorials, but that's how you learn, is by figuring out what the bugs are.
That was my big takeaway looking back at my college degree. I learned all these things, or at least I got grades on all these things, but it isn't going to actually sink in and make sense until you go through and experience it on your own. Like I learned a lot about object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming didn't make any sense to me until I actually got a dev job. And I was like, oh, okay, this makes more sense because I'm actually using it and seeing it. So I'm right there with you. Cooking just joined on YouTube. Hello. Coding After 30 quoted your tutorial stresses me out, which is awesome. We need to get a clip of that. And by the way, if people, I think this is a really good call out for content creators too, is it's really easy to do that. Just say, do this, do this, do this. I try to dissect those and like explain to people like this is why. But if people ever watch any of my content and you have like, you feel like that stuff is missing, make sure to let me know in comments. I can try to help clarify that. Nick had a comment a little while ago, had a hard time recently transitioning into a new job. So I think the difficulty is always sort of there, as we're all beginners, even seniors. Going from uber productive to new guy is humbling. Kind of curious, like you said you're starting your first role on Monday. Like how, I imagine there's lots of different mixed emotions, but how are you feeling going into that? And do you have any sort of like expectations for yourself going into that?
So I'm like, because at first I was worried. First I was worried about interviews, and I was like, I'm gonna start interviewing, and they're gonna look at me and just be like, "You're dumb. Why are you here?" And now I'm like, I'm gonna start my first day, and they're just gonna be like, "You're fired." Yeah, they're gonna be like, "Why are you here? You're fired." But like, I passed the technical. They liked me.
Mm-hmm.
They pushed to even like hire me earlier because they're like, "I need you to start ASAP."
Yeah.
So I'm worried about that because like, since I'll be doing email development, I'll be doing like designing the emails for sales campaigns, and Black Friday is coming up because I'm going to be working. Yeah.
Like immediately you're walking into the busiest sales season of the year.
Yes, because it's the company that owns Men's Warehouse and
okay.
stuff.
Yeah.
So it's retail. And
so when I get my email from Men's Warehouse, I will know where it came from. Yes, I love it.
If there's
I'm going to send you screenshots of every email that I get from now on. I'll be like, yes, this is awesome.
If there's any styling issues, it was not me. Not Leah T codes.
For the good ones, I will send you a screenshot.
Okay. That sounds good.
I'll be like, yes.
But they know like I've never done like email designs before, but like they had me do regular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in the interview because I had to do like technical, and they liked everything. So I'm sure it'll be fine. But it's just like all the unknowns when you're going into your first tech job. That's just really stressful. And also, like Nick said, when you're working on stuff yourself, you know, as you're learning, and I'm like comparing myself to where I was in January, I'm like, oh, I really know this stuff. But then you're going to start the job and be like, I know nothing.
Starting from scratch again.
Yeah.
Yep. And I can, I graduated, and I talk about this a lot, never learned the things that I should have in college, and then didn't get a lot of hands-on experience as a technical evangelist at Microsoft because my job was not writing software. It was demos and speaking and stuff. So then I walked into my first engineering role and didn't actually know how I would like stack up as a developer. I had no idea because I'd never actually done that before. And it went really well. I did really well. But the amount that you learn being on the job and just doing the job and being around other people writing code constantly, the amount you learn is exponential. It's amazing how much different of a developer you will be in 3 months, 6 months, especially a year, just from being able to do that day in, day out and being around people that are doing it at the same time.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. I think some things also helped me. So my husband actually is a software engineer, so he went to college for that. He's been working as also front-end web development, but for a year. So I was able to talk tech with him a lot and kind of have someone like help me debug things and also kind of get used to, I don't know, working with other engineers, because sometimes he would look at my code and just be like, why did you format it like this? Please, this is so ugly. I was like, oh my gosh. And I also started doing more co-programming too, or like pair programming with other engineers. And then 100 devs, we have to do group projects and the hackathons too. I feel like stuff like that kind of helps set you up for it, but nothing's going to be quite your work environment until you're actually there. But just getting used to like other people seeing your code and like running into like the Git flow issues before you get into the job. Because there were a lot of those with the first group project and 100 devs. Having someone write over your code and then having to like figure out all the issues as a group and learn how to communicate better. So I feel like you can do things to help prepare you, but you won't ever really truly be prepared until you're on the job. And then,
Yep. Fun fact, I had never used Git or GitHub in school. Like it wasn't until a few years later. So I like didn't even have that coming out of college. It was really interesting. Like we did, it's a computer science degree. So it's just different from a boot camp. Like boot camp, I would much rather have done, to be honest, from a learning perspective. Like I loved college, but from like what I got out of it, I think a boot camp would have been more valuable just because it's more practical. Like you actually get to build stuff versus kind of like learning theory behind stuff. And I think that has given me a foundation that a lot of people going through boot camps don't have, like specifically in, again, I didn't learn it that well, but in data structures and algorithms, like that whole segment of computer science. So I think I have like had a better base of that than a lot of people coming out of a boot camp, for example, but I didn't have the practical knowledge that a lot of people had. So I'm like really jealous of people that go through boot camps and graduate with like really fun experience of actually being able to build stuff.
I actually agree with that a lot because I did, I guess about 4 or 5 years ago, I took C and C++ in college.
Oh, cool.
And I did not like, I liked the C++ class. The C class was a disaster. But by the time I like left the classes, I didn't know like a stack versus queue or anything. Like I didn't know a lot. Like I was still maybe like, if you ask like how confident I felt in C or C++, I would be like elementary level, you know, like I wasn't really confident in it or fluent. Whereas JavaScript, I am very confident in JavaScript. I know a lot about JavaScript. I'm at the point where like if I want to make something, I know I can. Like even without having to look it up or do a tutorial. If you wanted me to build something in C++, I would be like have like 40 tabs open and be watching all the tutorials. And like I'm at the point with JavaScript where I can say, okay, here's how I would build this in JavaScript. So now if I want to write it in Python, I already know the logic for how I would set it up. And I just have to look up the syntax issues, like the differences there. So it carries over. So I feel like by building stuff yourself, you're able to get a deeper understanding of it than in college. But I agree with you. I think the logic and like all the theory and stuff does help with like data structures and stuff. Because like since I did math, I took like the logical class, like you have to take, I had to take linear algebra. I did C and C++. I did like I did a lot of stuff that you would use for machine learning and stuff too. So I had a bunch of the logic, which like computer science is built on. So that helps me whenever like, especially if you get a mathy question on Code Wars, I love those. I can do those, you know. So
like this is my sweet spot.
I'm like, ooh, word problems.
I love it. SJ commented that there were 3 CS grads in their boot camp, which like, again, I feel like it makes sense. Coding After 30 said, I learned more at my first job in the first 6 months than I did in previous 3 years of self-study. That's why I encourage people to get hired ASAP. And the beauty of that is like, it's much better learning and then you're getting paid to do it too. Like what better position to be in there? Yeah, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, I agree with that. Cause like, I feel like you're never fully going to feel ready. Like I was stressed out when I started applying full time in September and I was like, oh, I'll never get hired. And I got hired the beginning of November, you know? So it's just like, get yourself out there. Like I accepted a temporary position and right now it's only through to the end of January. They're trying to make it permanent. It might not be permanent, but it's like any experience is better than none. And if I'm getting paid to learn and then like interview for other positions, it's like I'd rather do that than not get paid.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Andres says mixed feelings on hackathons since my team used to run them. The value is back to the vendor, not the individual. I think you definitely get some mixed results of like the overall hackathon experience, but if you find, even if it's yourself or you find a person or two to work with on the team, hackathons I feel like are one of the best learning experiences out there because it's the same idea of like building the thing on your own, but in a confined, usually like over a weekend or something. Like you're just getting so much experience that you wouldn't necessarily have had, but in such a quick time span. And for people that can like stay up late and write code for long hours, which I like wouldn't do anymore, you get a lot out of it. I think it's a huge opportunity. I never did one in college because I thought it was literally like hacking. Like I had no idea. Like, and it wasn't something that people like explained. So I was scared of that and I was intimidated. And I wish that I had that experience in college, but I didn't because I didn't know what it was.
It does sound like you'd be hacking into computers. My thoughts on hackathons, they can be extremely stressful, but I was able to use both of my hackathon projects on my portfolio, and they stood out. Like they were really legitimate projects compared to like, because some people on their portfolio will have like I have a to-do list on mine, but you'll have like your to-do list or your calculator or something. If you go in a hackathon and you build this like big project out, if you put that on your portfolio, it really stands out. You know, I did my first hackathon the end of February, and I started learning web development in January. So it's like I was able to get a big project on my portfolio like right away. So I think it's really good for that.
Yep. And a little hack for people on to-do apps. The reality is every app is a to-do app from a perspective of everything as a CRUD app, meaning you have create, read, update, delete. So like if you build a to-do app in a tutorial or something, just change what the data is. So instead of a to-do app be a here's the books I've read or the books I want to read, or here's the something that the Starbucks mugs that I want to collect, and then check them off after you collect them. Like whatever it is, it's still a to-do app behind the scenes because those things are just fundamental. But you can brand that to something from a design perspective and from a data perspective that's going to make it look like a totally different thing. And hopefully be something like, if you tie that to something you're excited about, something you're a little bit more excited about. So
it's really funny because I changed mine on my resume to be called a stream data app. And so that I like showed my data from my streams on like different stuff. So I basically said it was like somewhere for me to like post like stuff to remember from my streams, but I made it sound like different from a to-do list, and no one checked it. And it was fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's all like, if you can build a CRUD application, that's what every application in the world is. There's obviously like bigger details in there, but that's basically what it comes down to. We're kind of at time, so I'll kind of give you the chance to wrap up, but with one question from Dev HTML email, which seems very fitting based on your new role. But they asked, what is your new role? So again, do you want to tell people what your new role is as we wrap up?
Sure. So my new role I accepted is a full-time like email developer position. It is temporary for right now, but I'll basically be like taking Figma prototypes from like designers and stuff and be like coding the emails. So I will have to worry about like some different things because like email layouts are a little tricky and stuff, but they did say they simplified it a lot. So I will be an email developer.
Yeah, that's why I like chuckled at the name of the HTML email. It's like a perfect fit. Last question we can touch on. SJ says, is experience the only way to build confidence? Here's my thing really quickly. Most people assume they either have confidence or they don't. The reality is you can practice confidence. So one of the things that I encourage people to do, it's actually something we do in our Discord, the Learn, Build, Teach Discord, is we have wins of the week conversations where we encourage people to share a win that they've had that week, no matter how big or that small. Because I think most of us forget to take intentional time to appreciate what we've learned, built, taught, etc. And if you get in the habit of intentionally taking time to appreciate yourself, naturally you're going to start to build more confidence in that sort of stuff. I think the more you like practice interviewing, the better you're going to have more confidence going into an interview. And a little bit of a hack in an interview, most people nerves get to them and they get more nervous if they're talking about things that they're not so comfortable with. So to your point, you talked about having a project that you would spend a lot of time on that you could talk about in your interviews a lot. That's something that you knew in and out that was easy for you to talk about. And so a hack is for people to find out what those topics are and help guide that conversation to the topics that you're comfortable talking about, which will help lower your nerves because you're in that comfort zone of talking about the thing that you're more comfortable with. So short answer for me is like, it's not just a habit or don't. Like confidence is a practice thing that you can be intentional to try to improve your confidence. But any last thoughts from you?
I would say I don't necessarily think I'm a very confident person or anything. I would say, so I spent so much time on like learning and building projects and stuff that I got to a point where I knew I had the knowledge, I felt confident in my knowledge in programming. And I did only get that through building stuff, through like failing and continuing, just the, what is it called? You said it earlier, just the consistency. I stayed consistent with it. Even if you can only put in a couple hours a day, that's still better than nothing. Like I would say experience is the way to build confidence in your skills. Because as you build up your skills and you realize, hey, I can do this, you become more confident. Like maybe I didn't know if they would like me, but I knew that if they asked me something, I could explain it. So I would say experience and practice talking about your projects and talking about technical stuff. Because then you practiced it. Whenever they ask you, you're confident in your answers because you already have them down pat.
Yep. I love it. That's like these kind of conversations are so easy for me because these are topics I talk about all the time. So I'm not having to make up stuff. I'm just talking about things that I've talked about 100 times before. And that getting that level of comfort because you've practiced it, because you've been intentional about it, makes it a lot easier. Dev says, congrats. That's the type of work they are looking to get into. Love how you got into the role. Maybe you'll have a conversation after. But Dev, I think you came in a little bit late, so make sure to go back and watch the beginning of the stream too to get all the all the details. Anyway, this was great. For people that are in the chat, I kind of want to make this a more formal series of doing career conversations. And this goes back to, we talked a little bit about like not having the ability to talk to every person individually at scale. But if I could like have some of these one-on-one conversations that get recorded and get shared for other people to benefit from, I get the one-on-one interaction with the benefit of like hopefully being able to benefit other people from my perspective and guest perspectives, which are always unique and add like extra value to it. So anyway, something I'm thinking about more. If anybody has ideas or would like to do one of these, feel free to send me a message. But Leah, it's great to meet you after like chatting back and forth on Twitter for a while. I'm so glad that you came on, and congratulations on the new role. It's super exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I had a great time. If you tweet about it or something, I'll retweet it, and I'm sure other 100 devs or someone would love to do this as well. So I'm sure you'd have plenty of people. But yeah, thank you so much.
I'll post in a link really quickly for people. 2 links. One is to your personal website, hosted on Netlify. Awesome. And then also on your Twitter account too. Okay. Which from there they can get you, from your website they can get to Twitch. Should I grab the Twitch link too?
Yes. The Twitch is in my bio on Twitter. You can also post it if you don't mind. You don't have to though.
Yeah. I also just like went to your Twitch page and I auto played and I heard your voice in the background. I was like, what is...
Oh no.
I do that with myself too, unfortunately. Like I go to my page while I'm recording something and then I hear like my voice and it's like, who is that?
I do that too, and I always make the worst face. I'm like, I don't want to hear myself.
Yeah, I think we all kind of like don't enjoy our own voice. But yeah, so there's a few links out there. Everybody go and support Twitter, Twitch, personal website. Thanks again for hanging out. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to like, I don't know, maybe chatting again in 6 months to see how you feel after like being in a role for a while. So
yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone in chat. Bye.
See you everyone.